Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you the very basics on how to knit. So all you need is a pair of straight knitting needles and a skein of yarn, any yarn of your choosing. So if you're a beginner knitter, which I assume you are, I highly recommend using wooden needles or bamboo needles instead of metal aluminum needles, because the aluminum needles tend to be very slippery. So the first thing we need to do is to create a slip knot. And I like to do this by laying the yarn over my two fingers, wrapping it around to create a circle. Then I spread my two fingers apart to create a little gap in the center. And then I push the yarn up through the center, drop my fingers out, and there you go. You should have a little slip knot that you can tighten. Then we are going to place the slip knot onto our needle. So before you can begin knitting any project, you have to get your stitches onto your needle. So you can see here's the tail. That's the tail right there. And the working yarn is the yarn that is attached to our skein. So here's the tail. I'm going to hold that towards the back and then, towards the back. And my working yarn that is attached to my ball is going to be the yarn I'm using. So today I'm going to show you how to do a knitted cast on. This is a good foundational cast on, and it's very similar to knitting. So here's the front of a loop. Here's the back of my loop. To do the knitted cast on, we are going to insert our needle through the front of the loop diagonally, and so we're going to create a little X with our needles. And then we're taking the working yarn and wrapping it around that bottom needle. We're going to pull the yarn up through the loop, and then we are going to twist the stitch. We're going to use our left needle and pick up that stitch from below and it creates a little twist as we place it onto our left hand needle. And that little twist is very important. So again, we're going to insert our needle diagonally through the front loop, wrap that working yarn around, and pull up through, and do a little twist. We're going to slip that stitch onto our left hand needle from below, like that. And that is how you do the knitted cast on. So when I was first beginning to knit, I'll show you, I used to have the tendency to try to place my needle my stitch directly onto my needle like this, but you don't want to do that. It's going to cause trouble later. You want to make sure when you're casting on, go in through the front of your stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull it through, and then pick up the stitch from below and give it that little twist. Now we have 4 stitches on our left hand needle, and I'll show you a couple of times. And like I said, the aluminum needles are a bit slippery, so I highly recommend, if you're a beginner, if you have them, wooden needles is probably going to be your best bet, but aluminum needles will work just fine. And I'll show you a few more times. So you're going to insert your right hand needle through the front loop of your stitch, bring the working yarn around, there it goes, slipping, pull up through, a little twist as you place that stitch onto your left hand needle. Insert, wrap your working yarn around, pull it up through your stitch, and then place your stitch onto the left hand needle. And I promise you, if you're struggling to cast on, don't worry, just keep practicing. Really, knitting is not as intimidating. It's not as hard as people might think. Once you train your hands and you develop your muscle memory, it will become like second nature to you. So you just stick with it, and I promise you'll get it. So insert your needle. We're still casting on our stitches. Wrap your yarn around, pull it up through, and pick up that stitch from the bottom to give it that nice little twist when you place it onto your left hand needle. Do it again. Insert through the front loop. Create that little X with your needles. Bring your yarn through. Twist and place it onto your left hand needle. And so you can see at the bottom this little ridge, that is your cast on edge. And you're going to want all your stitches to be nice and even and aligned, and you want that cast on edge to be nice and straight at the bottom. So now I'm going to show you how to knit. So it's similar to your cast on. You're going to insert your needle through the front loop of your stitch and create that little X with your needles, and you can see it's coming out through the back loop. And you're going to wrap the yarn over and pull that stitch through, but this time we're just going to go ahead and slide that stitch off your left hand needle. Let's do it again. Insert, wrap your yarn around, pull through, and slide the stitch off, and that is it. That's the knit stitch. Insert your needle, wrap your working yarn around, pull through, and slide that stitch off of your needle. Insert, wrap your yarn around, pull up through your loop, and then pull the stitch off the left hand needle. And like I said, once you get the motions down and you develop that muscle memory, this will become so much easier. And the knit stitch is pretty much one of the main stitches you will use when you are knitting. And it's pretty simple once you get down to it. Slide your stitches off, and you can see now we're getting down to our last couple of stitches here on our left hand needle. And this is our last stitch, so we're going to go ahead and knit this last stitch as well. So insert through the front loop, wrap your yarn around, and pull it through. And so now you can see our working yarn is now on the far left side, and there's our cast on edge, and there's our tail. So what we need to do in order to continue knitting, see our working yarn is on the left hand side now, we need to flip our needle so the working yarn is back on the right hand side. And I like to just kind of move my tail aside. And now we are going to do the same thing. We are going to knit all the way across. And you can see these are what are called purl bumps. And when you're knitting flat, you have a right side of the work and a wrong side of the work typically, but we're not going to worry about that today. Today we are focusing on just learning how to knit. So we are going to continue knitting. Insert your needle through the front loop, and you can see it should come out through the back loop of that same stitch. Taking your working yarn and wrap it over your needle, pull it up through the stitch and slide it off. Again, insert your needle through the front loop, diagonally through, wrap your working yarn around, pull the yarn through that stitch and slide it off. wrap your working yarn around, pull your stitch through and slide it off. And as you're knitting, as you're learning to knit, you're going to want to be mindful of your tension. You don't want to pull your stitches too tight, and you don't want to make your stitches too loose. So you have to you'll develop your own unique knitting tension as you go. Every knitter has their own tension, how tight you or loose you wrap your yarn, so and pull your yarn. So I would say just try to keep a medium knitting tension, not too tight, not too loose. You want your stitches to be able to slide freely, and you want to be able to pick your stitches up with your needles, but you don't want them so loose that you're getting gaps or they're falling off. So here we're at the last stitch. We're going to go ahead and knit through the front, out the back. You have the little cross with your needles. Bring your yarn over, pull through. And now you've just knit your second row. And you can see here, the very, very bottom, that's still your cast on edge is the very bottom. So now we need to rotate our needles again to make sure that working yarn is back on the right hand side. And then our tail will kind of hang off towards the left. You can hold your tail in your left hand if you want to keep it out of the way, or you can kind of just let it hang to the side. Just be mindful of not making sure you're not knitting your tail. So you can see you're starting to get these nice knitted rows. We're going to continue, and that's really the entire video is we're just practicing our knit stitch. Slide it off, insert through the front of your stitch. It should come out of the back loop. Your needle should come out through the back loop. Bring your yarn around, pull up and through that stitch, slide it off. Insert your needle through the front loop. Bring your working yarn around and over, pull through. Go in through the front loop. Bring your working yarn around, pull up through that stitch and slide it off. Last stitch is on our left hand needle, so we're going to just knit. Go in through the front loop, bring your working yarn up over, pull it through and slide it off. As you continue knitting, your work is going to grow downwards this way, and you can definitely play with this. If this is your first time knitting or this is your first project, you can cast on more stitches and you can work maybe a scarf, or you can work maybe a little coaster. That would be a great beginner knitting project. So like I said, feel free to take what you learn here and just apply it in a way that works for you. So I'll show you this a few more times. We're going to insert our needle through the front loop. You see we've got our little X with our needles. We're going to wrap our working yarn around, pull up through the stitch and slide it off. Again, insert through the front loop diagonally. Bring your working yarn around, pull through the loop, slide it off. So I went ahead and continued knitting for a few rows so that you can see what your work will look like as you continue knitting. Like I said, you can turn this into a scarf, a coaster, a little washcloth. This is just a really great way for you to practice knitting and work on developing those skills. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It will go a long way in helping me grow my channel and helping me to continue making these kinds of tutorials. If you want to see more beginner-friendly tutorials, please let me know. I would love to hear your feedback. I have a ton of things in the works, and I have some full-length tutorials coming soon. So I hope this video helps you. I hope it inspires you to pick up your needles and begin knitting. It truly is a very rewarding hobby and a skill that I would love to help those interested to develop. So be well, keep it cozy, and I will see you in the next one.